Hello there, moin moin ladies and gentlemen, Don Spector here with another TWS review for you, and today I have the Galaxy Buds 2 Pro. I always want to say it's the Buds Pro 2, this would make more sense to me in terms of naming scheme, but yeah, let's see what Samsung has delivered us on package here. Yeah, if you have seen the first one, which I didn't really like that much, the packaging is basically exactly the same. So you get this box with a picture of them, you have some serial thing, and then you have to shake it open like that. That is again like medium difficult, and then you would be greeted with the manual here. Here would be accessories on which we get the standard Samsung USB-C cable and ear tips, which you can see here. And then inside that you would have the actual transport case, about which we talk a bit later on. But first, yeah, let's take a look at what you get. So the tips, yeah, what should I say? These are not good. If you have experienced the first gen, these are similar. So they are relatively thin, floppy, they're not really that well isolating, and due to the lack of sizing, it's just S, M, and L. This is S here, by the way, and this is I think M. Yeah, it's not so easy to get in good fit with the tips that you get. I think they should have at least given you the possibility for a pair of foam tips, or maybe an S and SM or something in between. It's just not enough generally, and yeah, we talk about that when we talk about fit and comfort later on. So yeah, that's what you get. Like, there isn't much to talk about packaging accessories. That's what you get. So next, let's talk about IEM and case build. This is the case. If you have seen the first one again, this is kind of the same thing. Actually has some weight to it, like it has density. Does look definitely cheaper when it feels in the hand, just because it's heavy. And yeah, on the back side you have a bit of a print that is barely readable. It's like matte, plasticky. I'm not sure how long this will stay like that, honestly. But so far in the weeks I've been using it and really almost daily driving it, it has been fine so far. Then in the back here you have the USB-C charger, standard right now, which I do like. Seems to work fine. Then we have the hinge, which I think is only plastic, but it doesn't feel that weak. So if you try to bend it in the up direction here now, it doesn't feel like it will break on you soon. But I don't know, like I have not had the Buds 1 for long enough to tell you how sturdy this is or not, but it just feels right at the moment. And then on the inside, this actually closes magnetic, as you can hear by the flap. So it stays closed well enough for me, and I didn't have any problems with the buds falling out. And yeah, this actually fills the case, or like the buds fill the case basically perfectly. So they're also not rocking around, also it's just staying exactly how it should be. At the front, not visible now, you have a charging indicator for the case, and on the inside you have a charging indicator for the buds. And that's kind of it. Like, there's not much talking about the case here. It's working, like there's not much criticism here, it's fine. So yeah, then let's talk about the actual build of the buds before we come to comfort and fit later. So let me remove the tip here. This is the bud, and if you have seen any like reasonably made TWS, yeah, these will be pretty damn similar. So it's just plastic, it doesn't feel particularly well made, it doesn't feel particularly cheap, it's kind of this weird, like, dead pink, or not pink, purple color. Not a fan of this. I think the first one did look a bit better, but because it's not actually reflective, as you can see, it doesn't really at all collect fingerprints, which is a nice thing. So at the front here, you have a microphone hole. You have a bigger microphone grill at the front. You have, I think this is an infrared sensor here to detect if you wear it, and another microphone grill here. And last but not least, charging contacts here, and maybe the L&R indicator here, which I wish would have been color indicated, not just the print on here. It's not so well readable if the contrast isn't good. Yeah. And yeah, when inside here you can see the grill, which actually is, yeah, very highly insulated, I would say. Probably due to its IPX7 rating. Yeah, there needs to be protection in front of the actual outlet here. So yeah, it seems to be generally well made. The gaps unfortunately are not the best, as you can see around here. Like, my fingernail clearly feels it, and it doesn't feel like it's as well made as other IEMs that I have had. But to be fair, they're like $140 at the moment, and with all of this tech in here, which we talk about later, I think this is still a well-made TWS. It just could have been better, especially if you see the original asking price. Okay, next, let's talk about comfort and fit. And as you can see, this nozzle is super short. It's only like 2 or 3 millimeters long, and so getting some tips on this is actually not that easy because it's so short. And yeah, that combined with the relatively thick insertion after that, as you can see here, this is thick. It's not so easy to get this inserted as well as it should. Combining that with the really short tips that you get with it, yeah, if you want to use this with like the tips it comes with, you definitely need to get a size up instead of down. But I usually suggest if you want to have a good insertion, go a size down. Here you definitely need to get a size up. And even to my ear canal, honestly, L. Like I have small ear canal, I needed L tips because the insertion was so shallow that with the original tips, like it just doesn't fit well. And honestly, even if you use tips that are third party, you have a problem with the case. Because this is not deep enough to accompany, for instance, the liquid silicone tips, which fit great on the Buds Pro, like to my ear. But because they don't fit in here, I haven't used them that much. Like, I just don't want to remove the tips every time I remove the IEMs. So I ended up with something medium length. This is the velvet tip. And the velvet tips, while not fitting as good as the liquid silicone tips, still fit me well enough. And with this, I didn't have the feeling they were falling out. It's just not as good as the, liquid silicone tips would be. An other alternative I have for you, and that kind of keeps the same fit as the original tips, so like a really shallow insertion. I think this is the BGVP foam tips. Those are like ball shaped, as you can see. They are short. And if you really squeeze them on, they will fit on the Galaxy Buds Pro 2. And yeah, these just fit me very well. Like, this is probably the best tip you can use on these. I also did measurements of them, and they didn't influence the sound that much compared to original tip. So you can just use these here, and you will get better isolation with it. You will get a better fit. And yeah, this generally seems to be working better for me than, as I said, the tips that is included. So that means comfort and fit of these is not great. They just insert very shallowly. Like, even for me who has small ear canal, is too shallow in terms of an insertion, and that also is bad for passive isolation, about which we talk next. Yeah, so first there's passive and there's active isolation, right? Active would be ANC, which we talk next when we talk about isolation here, but passively, yeah, this is a slight upgrade over the first Buds Pro. I didn't really have anything positive to say about the isolation about the first Buds Pro, like not at all, wasn't badly isolating IEM. This one here is a bit more dense, I assume because it is more electronics. So that means it generally isolates a tiny bit better. That means it's still below average, or at best, if you really have the right tip, I think it gets into the average realm in terms of passive isolation. But it's really, without the active isolation, it's not enough to walk around the city center for me. Like, you can hear most things like somewhat through it, and you really need the ANC in order for it to, yeah, make any sense whatsoever. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, I do not have the right rig to measure how effective the ANC is. So the Rtings review or the Sound Guys review, they have a rig to measure the objective performance of ANC. Generally seems to be pretty damn good. Like, it's not the best even in the TWS space, but it generally seems to be well. And yeah, as it is normal with ANC, right? It works best at the lower frequencies, so the low hum of trams or trains or airplanes, that gets filtered out pretty well. And to my ear, subjectively, it's about like, I would say 70% or something like that. Yeah, again, please refer to the review of Rtings or Sound Guys for objective measurements, because their results are slightly different, but the overall trend is similar. Like, these are like good ANC ones, but not the best. Which again makes sense if you have these Sony XM4 over ears. I mean, yeah, they are just way bigger, so they just have way more surface to absorb the treble, which this one does not. But again, using foam tips does improve passive isolation, and you get to an average state. And that combined with the ANC makes it, I want to say, a pretty good treble companion. Because the ANC is also working towards the lower mids and slightly the mids maybe, but not that much, where you mostly rely on passive isolation. But it's still good enough for me, and yeah, I would say this is a nice treble companion, because it generally does work in the lower frequencies pretty well. It's like 70% or so gets reduced. So yeah, good treble companion. Next, let's talk about software. And I'm sorry, I will only be talking about the features that you have on all devices with software, because Samsung, in its infinitely wisdom, decided they want to OS lock some of the features. Sorry for the cut, an ambulance just drove around outside at the window, so I had to make a quick cut here. As I said, Samsung, in their infinite wisdom, decided, hey, we are locking features in the OS, so only on Samsung smartphones you will be able to use all of the software features, which basically is like they're not existing, because most people don't have Samsung devices, they have a random smartphone, they might have Apple, and I can't review features that are OS locked. Some of those that you would have, if you would have a Samsung phone, would include something like a game mod. Yeah, you can activate that. I think you can activate a hearing test and a few other small knickknacks, but generally neat, like similar as the 360 sound. If you're into that, that is neat. But because it is OS locked, I'm not going to put this on a positive side here. I just say it exists and I keep it out because it's basically the same as non-existent if you lock it to something. So yeah, that means you do have an EQ, which unfortunately is not customizable. It's just pre-made EQ profiles. So I didn't really have need for those because the tuning itself is also so nice, but it would exist, right? Other than that, you can set the slightly customize the controls. I would wish it would be a bit better here. Like there's not much possibilities to have like tap, double tap, triple tap, long press. There's not enough possibilities here. So it would be nice if Samsung would expand on that, because that was already an issue with the first Galaxy Buds. Like the software was a bit lacking behind the possibilities, and it's the same with the second one. Especially with the lock of more features, it just is not as great as I wish the software would be. And that also means, unfortunately, the software on the buds here. Yeah, Bluetooth protocol, theoretically, it comes with Bluetooth 5.3. That means theoretically, it would support the LC3 codec. Yeah, no, again, Samsung's wisdom, they decided, no, you know what, we don't need LC3. We just implement the base Bluetooth 3 codec here. So that means, because it also is lacking LDAC, there is not really possibility for a high-res codec. So you will be stuck with either SBC or AAC, and happy to report AAC is working fine with these. So yeah, this is what you're stuck with most devices. On a Samsung device, again, as I said, like it's software locked, they give you the Samsung Scalable codec, which I usually not a fan of talking about how big the effect of codecs is on the sound quality, because it really depends on what the MP3 or the FLAC or whatever you're listening to is. If that is well recorded and well mixed, you could potentially hear a difference. If it's not, you can't. So I'm not talking about that too much in detail. Just giving you my rough personal view here. I think the Samsung Scalable codec does help slightly in terms of clarity, but not much. And we talk about more when we talk about sound later. So yeah, now let's come to sound. And let me throw you on the measurements. And yeah, if you look at these measurements, this is a very, very well measuring IEM. Yeah, no, it's a TWS. Oops. So yeah, here is your problem. Onkel Harman definitively helped here, and this is still better than the first generation of Buds Pro to me. And yeah, this means it's U-shaped with a very focused bass boost past 200 Hz, nice pinna gain, drop after that. And yeah, and that directly come to treble here. Oh man, what should I say? Like positive, like look at this measurement. What should I say? This is Harman inspired. It just works so well. Generally, like we have a peak at 3K, then a downward slope with energy past 10K according to the coupler. Yeah, you have energy past 10K and slight peak. And if you change the tip to something more long, something that generally gives you a bit better fit, yeah, you can also see that the general the acoustics change here, because there's resonance past 9.5 or 8.5K, sorry. That means, yeah, if you go for a longer tip, according to measurement, subjective after that, you do get more upper treble and mid treble detail here. And subjectively, I can tell you, how does it sound? It just sounds so right. Again, this is Harman inspired treble-ish without going too close to Harman. It just works perfectly to me. This is, I have not watched Crin's opinion about it, but honestly, I would be surprised if Crin says this is a bad sounding TWS. To me, that's why the title. I think this might be the best tuned TWS I have tried so far, easily beating everything else, and doesn't have really any competition what I've heard. Like this really is tuned perfectly. Turbo Spot, this is how it should be. This is what every mainstream TWS should sound like, in my opinion. Maybe a tiny bit less bass, tiny bit more bass, tiny bit less treble or more treble, but this is exactly right. And that means every benchmark track I threw at this, it just, the general tonality is so right. Like really there's zero complaints about tonality here. Personally, though, again, let me stress, I like more treble. So I was really more a fan of the deeper inserting, respectively longer tips, because yeah, this resonance does also exist to my ears and it makes it just a bit more pizzazzy in the mid to upper treble. But objectively speaking, I think you don't need any EQ with this, you don't need the other tip, it is fine as it is. And yeah, that comes with a big but. I will also talk about this in terms of dynamics and detail later. The problem with the Buds 2 Pro, and I think you can see probably why, this is dampened, right? There's a lot of dampening going on. There's a fine grill. Beneath the grill, there's another membrane to keep the water out because, yeah, IPX7. And that means it comes off as unfortunately dampened, also sounding. That means all of my benchmark tracks, like really everything I heard with it, good, bad, old days from the album Insatiable High, Kokuriku Bushido from Beautiful Bamboo Flute, Blunted, Shout DJ Stranger Mix from Dreams in Monochrome album, Blunted, Pointy Steel Overture from the album Fronts, also blunted, David Never Comes from S&M2, blunted. It does not matter, every song that you listen to in detail comes off as blunted with this. And this is kind of strange if you look at the frequency response. This does not indicate it's blunted, but it just sounds like that every time I listen to something in detail. However, let me stress, this is really only applying if you listen in a quiet room. I measured this with active noise cancelling on, because that's, I think, how most people will use it, and I don't think it makes sense to measure an IEM in the other mods when I'm 80% at least sure most people will just keep it ANC on and just use it like that. So yes, from that sense, right, it's blunted, but it's not bad, because in day-to-day life, at work, during commute, if you sit at home, most of the time, you're not that focused on the music, you're not that focused on the details, you're not that focused on the leading edge, on the trailing ends, you're just listening to music, you're just enjoying, you're just commuting. So from that sense, I think these are absolutely fine, and the bluntness really only is noticeable if you have an A-B comparison to the quintet, for instance, which is almost exactly my personal preference, then you notice it. But other than that, it's so well sounding, which is also true for the mids. I don't know what to really say about the mids. They just sound so right. There's nothing that sounds strange here. Everything is in place. They are clear. They have a good tonality. They are clean. Like everything positive that I can use is just the case here. Again, if you like your lower mids to be more present, I think you will be a bit disappointed, but because these are dynamic drivers in here, yeah, even the lower mids, they didn't come off as lacking to me. Again, your personal preference might vary, but just from a more objective, or at least standpoint here, I think the lower mids are absolutely well done, and I really don't have any complaints whatsoever. It just sounds so right. Biggest problem here might be in staging. That really isn't that good in terms of vocalist, but it's not important because the tonality is so right. And that brings me to bass, and I mean, look at the graph, what should I say? The story continues. Bass is really well defined, it has a decent enough mid bass, it has lower bass, it has rumble, it is well separated. Yeah, it even managed to hit pretty well, which not all IEMs with the signature manages, but this does. It hits hard enough. Mid bass punch in Synthwave, for instance, absolutely sounds right. And really, I couldn't find any track in my benchmark library or on my whole library where I said, oh, something is off of the treble here. Like, this sounds weird, or it doesn't have enough bass. Always just right. Yeah, again, maybe EQ profiles that you can actually personalize would be better, because I definitely know people who like more bass, and just giving them the opportunity to tune the bass how you like, maybe more at 200 Hz, or maybe a tiny bit more at 300 Hz if you would like a bit more meaty bass. Would be nice to have this opportunity, but generally bass just so right. And last but not least, sub-bass extension, it's okay. Again, these dynamic drivers, they have some punch, but they lack in the lower registers a bit. That means my benchmark track, Interstellar's Mountains, yeah, 2 minutes 14 or 14 and a half on higher volume. That's very average. And yes, before you asked, I compensated for the light Bluetooth delay here. So yeah, the actual delay is about 2 minutes or actual like base note or the depth, the description for everybody not knowing what my benchmark library is. The track Mountains, it has a base note that starts here at like 80 Hertz, 70 Hertz, and then it drops to like 50 Hertz, 40 Hertz, 20 Hertz, all the way down to the floor of the even audible frequencies. And good dynamic drivers would manage to get this transition pretty good, all the way to 20 Hertz, which is about at 2 minutes 15 or 16, like 2 minutes 15 and a half or so. So really good bass drivers would be able to manage it until like 2 minutes 16, that's the floor, like doesn't go lower than that. Average ones like 2 minutes 14, and not good ones 2 minutes 13 and a half or 2 minutes 13. So this is right in the average. And there isn't much negative here, it's average, but it's fine. And then next, let's come to Soundstage layering imaging. This is very unimpressive. It's not great, it's not bad, it's just all right. You have a kinda okay soundstage. It has 3 layers. It images kind of okay enough without being bad. So really, it's just okay. No criticism, but also no praise. And then the problem chapter is separation, dynamic, and coherence. Again, yeah, separation just because of the frequency response is really well done. Like this is how well frequency response can separate. Unfortunately, actual technicalities lag a bit behind. So yeah, your wired cousin will still separate better, but it's really not much better, right? So it's just a smidge better. And then we come to dynamics, and I think this is the biggest problem. As I said, it comes off as blunted. So that means it will not feel like you have the best dynamics. It doesn't feel like the best details, but it's fine, as I said, for most situations. So only really critical listening, you will feel like you are lacking a bit, but other than that, it's fine. And yeah, of course, coherence and timbre, this just sounds right. It sounds slightly woody because it's not so resolving, but overall coherence and timbre is fine, no complaints whatsoever. Oh, and a quick interception here. Let's talk about the other sound modes that you have besides active noise cancelling. So you have the nothing mode. It's just no active, like microphones don't do anything. And then you have the pass-through. Pass-through is also measured from Rtings and Sound Guys. Doesn't sound the most natural, but it works fine enough. It gives you decent vocals if you talk to somebody. It gives you decent noises from around, but they are a bit wavy generally. And if you, for instance, stand at a checkout and you hear boop, beep, and then some rustling and maybe some clanking, and then the vocalist is better audible than some of the other noises. So maybe not the best choice for biking, but it seems to be working fine here. And yeah, the passive mode, it's just passive, it doesn't do anything. And that brings me to the verdict. Hey, Samsung, you learned something from Uncle Harman. Nice, good job, bro, good job. Tuning of the Buds Pro really is almost flawless. Like there's not much I can criticize on an objective level here. Subjectively, as I said, I like a bit more upper treble. I want to have a bit more pizzazz. But objectively, I think they exactly went with the right signature here, and it's just working so well. Adding to this is generally some good working ANC, and if you want to do a bit of tip rolling, I think you can also get this to fit well, for instance with the BGVP foam tips here. This can fit well, but it just takes a bit of time to get there. And that combined with the current pricing on the market, which is about like 130 to 140 bucks for a good piece of technology here with a good sound, which again has the disadvantage of being not maintainable because it's all glued, it's glued to oblivion, like you can't replace the battery, like if anything breaks, it's dead. So I think I can see an argument to be made to recommend these because yeah, they sound well, the active noise cancelling works well, they're transportable, it's a good piece of technology generally. You just have to live with them that in like 3 years or 4 years, the battery will be definitively quite a bit lower, and yeah, you will need to buy a new one then. But other than that, I think it's a good TWS, and I really stand behind my opinion here. It is possibly the best TWS you can buy at the moment, if we also look at sound quality and the overall package. So similar to other amps, I will give it a careful stamp of recommendation, just because it's really good. But again, keep in mind, there are problems with it. As I said, insulation insert, very shallow, active noise cancelling, not the absolute best, and yeah, then also there's no EQ, so if you want more bass, you can't. You need to use third-party apps for that. But yes, that's it. That's my review for the Buds 2 Pro 2. Again, I forgot. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, you have criticism, please leave a comment. And with this, Tonspector out.